Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome to yet another episode on Little's Law YouTube channel. In this video, let us see about the once only logic controller in JMeter. So before we dive into the video, this is me, your Vasant Shanmugam. I welcome you all to Little's Law YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed yet, please do subscribe to our channel, like the video, share it with your friends, and comment your feedback and your queries in the comment section. So first, let us see what is a once only logic controller. So this once only logic controller tells JMeter to process the controller inside it only once per thread and pass over any requests under it during further iterations through the test plan. Now let's see that with an example, and let's see how to add and how to use the once only logic controller. So I have an example here. Let me open it and we will see how to use it. So now we have got a sample project to have a demo on once only controller. So here under this thread group, where we have two threads, which is two users, and we have three iterations or through three loop we have. And under this we have the one only controller, and we have the home page and then the bug page. So now let's execute and see how does this once only controller works. So here we have two threads. Let me make it to one thread, and we have a loop count of 3. And now let's see how does it execute and in what sequential order do they execute. So here we can see the home page has got executed only once and the bug page has got executed 3 times. So to give a demo, so what I'm going to do is let me make a copy of this and I will bring it outside. Let me duplicate it and I will bring this home page outside of the controller. So now we have the home page and the bug page outside the once only controller. I'm disabling it now. So now let's see how does this work. So we have one user and 3 loop. So I'm running once again. So here we can see that the page has executed in the order that the first home page is getting executed and then the bug page, and again it went back to the top. So again it has executed the home page and then the bug page and then the home page and then the bug page. So since we have got 3 loops, and that's the reason we have got 3 iterations of each of the request. So let's again enable our once only controller, and now I'm disabling the home page request which is outside the once only controller. So now in case, what if happens if I'm running 2 threads and I'm executing the same test, and let's see how does it work. So here we can see at the beginning of the test or beginning of the validation, we have both the home page request inside the once only controller have got executed, and the rest of the other transactions which are inside the loop has got executed 3 times for 2 users, which is totally 6 times. So we might have a question that how to execute this home page only once if I want to execute. That is, I do not want to execute even 2 times. I just want to have this executed only once. So in that case, we have another option where we can add another thread group, and we can move this once only controller to this thread group, and we can make it as one thread and one loop. And now if we execute this, before that, let me add a listener to the overall test. So now if we execute this test, we can easily find, or we can easily identify that the once controller have got executed only once, and this particular transaction, which is under the loop of 3 times, have got executed 6 times, since we have got 2 users and 3 iterations of 6 times. And this is how we can execute. So say for example, in some cases where we have to log in once for one user and we have to do multiple iterations with different users. So there are various other scenarios as well. Let us try that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this once controller back to our original thread group. And let me show you what if, I mean, why this once only controller is more needed. So say for example, if I'm changing this logic controller to a transaction controller or to a simple controller, and let's see what happens, and we can easily identify, or we can easily understand why a once only controller is required during the testing. So now I'm running the test, and here we can easily see that the home page has got executed multiple times irrespective of the controller. So this, we'll just try the other controller. Say for example, what happens if I'm changing it to a loop controller. So here, if I'm having the loop controller and I'm giving just one iteration, and let's now see how does this work. So I'm running the iteration now. So even in that scenario, the transaction has got multiplied by the number of users and the number of iterations. So to avoid all these, and in some situations where we might need to run the particular step only once, so in those scenarios, this once only controller will help us a lot. And we'll have another method where we will copy this or we'll duplicate this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the bottom of the page, and let me change this name to logout. So this is going to be the logout transaction, and let's see how does this works and see what are the restrictions we have with our once only controller. So before that, let's see how to add the once only controller. So go to the thread group, right click on it, click add, and select logic controller, and under that we have our once only controller. So for now, let me remove it. So now the demo is going to be, we have one login and 3 times the bug page, and then we are going to log out. So let us see how does it work. So first let us see it with one user, and then we will move it to the 2 user test. So for now, let's clear this and we will have a demo. So here we can see, so this is again a restriction. So here we can see the very first iteration takes the login and then the bug page, and in the sequential order it went to the logout. So in some such scenarios, we have to be very careful in placing these particular transactions. So this once only controller which is placed after this bug page will not execute at the last. Instead, they all get executed in a logical manner or in a chronological manner, that the first transaction and then the second transaction even though it is outside the once only controller. And then it comes to the third transaction, which is our once only controller. It gets executed and then it again goes back inside the thread group and execute the other two transactions. So this is one of the restriction or the limitation that we have with once only controller. That is, if we have the once only controller placed in the script, they all get executed logically in a chronological order, that is one after the other. I would say it gets executed in a chronological order. So make sure that we have to place this transaction in a proper way. So let me give you another demo. So okay, let's now see it with two users and see how does it work. So now I'm giving with two users, clearing it now. So even with the two users, it is the same case. That is, the login has happened first, and then the bug page, which is the second transaction, and then without iterating it inside, it has come to the third, that is the once only controller, and it has got executed. So this is how it works. So this is one of the limitations that we have with once only controller. So in any order or in whatever order we keep the once only controller, it gets executed in the same manner. So let's see one more addition or one more information on this. So I'm adding a parent to it, parent to once only controller, where I'm adding a loop controller, and I'm making this loop controller to two times, two iterations or two loop. For now, I'm disabling this to avoid any confusions. So now we have a loop controller, and under which we have our once only controller, and then we have the bug page. So let's now see how does it works. So I'm clearing this now, and under here we will keep it as one number of thread and one loop count, so we can easily identify how much loop count is happening inside. So let's run this. So here we can see that. So here we can see the login page has been executed only once and the bug page. So let us change this to 3 and see how does it works. So any number of times that you keep inside the loop controller, the once only controller will execute only once. But any change we make here will impact or will bring a change. So for now, what we'll do is I will make a change in the loop controller here, which is on the top of the once only controller. So we are adding the loop controller as a parent, and we are adding 3 iterations, and we are adding just one loop count in the thread group. So now we have one user who will iterate only once, but the loop controller, which is the parent of the once controller, has 3 iterations. So let's now see how does it work. So now here we can see that even though we have 3 iterations in the loop controller, we have got the once only controller executed only once, just once. Now let's make a change. So here we'll have the loop in the loop controller as 1, and here we have the loop count as 3, and let's see how does it work. So here we can see that the loop controller, I mean the login page, which is inside the once only controller, and that is which is inside the loop controller, has got executed 3 times. Which is totally based on the loop count here. So what we'll do is we will move it outside the loop controller, and let's now try the same settings and we'll see how does it work. So Initially with the loop controller of 1 iteration and the thread group with 3 iteration, we have got 3 times. So let's now see how does it work. Since we have moved the once only controller outside the loop controller, and let's see whether it makes any impact to the once only controller. So here we have got just only once. So it's just a quick recap. So what initially we did is we have kept the thread group as 1 and the loop controller as 3. So this was the first setting. So the loop count was 1 and the loop controller was 3, and we have kept the once only controller inside the loop controller. And when we execute, the once only controller have got executed only once, since the main loop, the thread count, the threads are the users loop count was only 1. And then we made a change. We made this loop count to 3 and the loop controller here as 1, and then we have got 3 iterations. So now what we did is we have moved the loop count to 3 and we have moved the once only controller outside the loop controller, and when we execute we have got just only one time of transaction. So with that we come to an end, and before that we'll have a quick recap. So once only controller will execute only once or once only, and to add that we have to go to the thread group, right click on the thread group and click add, and go to the logic controller, and we'll have this once only controller as the 5th controller. So just choose that, and this once only controller will execute in a sequential manner. So we had already executed that where we have a sequence, we have a login at the first transaction and the bug page and then the logout. So it is supposed to log in and then the bug page and finally the logout, but this once only controller will execute in a sequential manner. So the login has happened, the login had been executed, and then one bug page, and then it has moved to the logout, and then the two bug page transaction had took place. So this is one of the restriction where placing this once only controller has to be very careful in a way that it has to be outside the scope of the transactions. And then we have made a different set of, we have executed this once only controller under the loop controller, and we saw how does it executed, how many times does it executed, and what has really made the change. That is, no matter how many loop you have, or keeping this loop controller as a parent to once only controller will not make any change until you make change in the thread group count or the thread group loop. So I think this video would have been very useful to you. We will meet in another interesting video in our next session. Till then, it's bye-bye from Vasant Shanmugam and Little's Law.